crackers in the pantry fallacy that Bunsen points out, not everything is proven in the same way.
Right.
I mean, is it the case that the way that I go about proving something in math is the same way that I prove something in chemistry? Is it the same way that I prove that I love my wife?
Right.
No, I mean, it's just silly, right? Again, these are really basic, naive assumptions on the part of the people that adopt these schools. And they typically don't, make the connection between the fact that, for example, to say that some beliefs are basic and other beliefs are not basic, properly basic and non-basic, assumes that you already have a prior criteria to sift them out.
Exactly.
But the prior criteria was not included in the properly basic beliefs, but it has to be.
Exactly.
And so they just have all of these arbitrary assumptions that they don't give an account for and can't. And by the way, the arbitrary assumptions then become the other thing that they reference to justify the properly basic beliefs.
Right.
Well, if something is properly basic justified on some other principle, then it's not properly basic. Because in their system, by definition, a properly basic belief does not refer to another belief to find its justification.
Yeah, so back to Aristotle, and
they're stuck in what is that? That's a circle.
That's circularity.
And what is it that the person from our school is trying to point out, which is that at a certain level, guys, circularity is unavoidable.
Yes, it's inevitable.
That does not mean that we're saying in any and every case you can make circular arguments, right? I'm not denying the fallacy of circularity, but I like to give the example of as we often point out, this is a category mistake. What do I mean by that? You can't reduce meta level questions to non-meta level questions or to basic level questions. So for example, let's say I have the belief that Lil Wayne lives next door to me, and I've seen a guy coming in and out of the house with dreads, and he looks like Lil Wayne, right? And then people don't believe me, and so but I'm really firm in this belief. So I'm really probably, I have a 90% probability. I'm pretty sure that's him, man. And then so it turns out we get a camera crew over here, and we go over there and we knock on the door, and it turns out, oh no, it's somebody else, right? It's Bill Cosby wearing a Lil Wayne dreadlock head. I don't know, right? So, but it's not him. So I had a really strong belief I was convinced of. But does being wrong about that destroy the possibility of knowledge in my world? Is my worldview going to collapse if I'm wrong about that?
Nope.
No. But if I say something like, well, I just don't believe that words have meaning. I don't believe that logic is the case. I don't believe that there are any laws of logic. Well, wouldn't you point out that how am I talking? Right. How am I making arguments?
How am I understanding you to even respond? The use of language already presupposes some type of logical consistency.
Right. So to demonstrate the difference between a meta level question and not a meta level question, right? I mean, being wrong about something at a factual level or a non-meta level question doesn't destroy the possibility of knowledge, right? But if there is no such thing as logic, if there is no such thing as words having meaning, then now we've destroyed the possibility of knowledge at all, if that's the case, you see. So in the same way, that's why we point out that something that is a meta level question cannot avoid circularity. And so it's just an unavoidable feature of those level of questions, because those levels of questions become self-referencing. Yes. Again, how do we explain words having meaning without using words? It's an impossible thing. But we wouldn't say that because words are ultimately self-referencing that, well, then I guess words have no meaning because words are based on the fallacy of circularity. No, that's ridiculous, right?
Right. So
that's the point of the set theory stuff, which is to demonstrate that things become self-referential at a certain level. But when it comes to debating matters of fact or matters of empirical data, right, these kinds of questions, I can definitely be wrong. I could be proven wrong on the basis of new evidence, right? But that doesn't destroy the possibility of knowledge being wrong about some factual claim like that.
And so all this stuff has led these as the article that you sent me, these autonomous systems, as if Kurt Gödel's right, Kurt Gödel, and his incompleteness, that all these systems inevitably become self-referential. all these autonomous systems, since we've done away with the presupposition of God, we begin with that basic foundational principle of the belief of God, and therefore from there we can get into these metaphysical speculations, categories, empirical understanding. How much does our mind actually understand the phenomenal reality we experience? But if we don't have God, then we are diving into a self-referential system. Something has to appeal outside the system. And so conclude this talk then, because I feel like we've done a really good job bringing all this stuff together. Conclude it with then why the transcendental argument is the necessary precondition for knowledge itself, because every other system of knowledge building outside of a beginning of an a priori appeal to God ultimately is circular by definition, based on its own grounds for knowledge, for justification of knowledge itself. Therefore, it completely undermines the whole process.
Yeah.
And then lead into, so again, this whole coherency thing and the transcendental argument.
So this is where coherence theory of truth and epistemology comes into play, because as I was mentioning earlier with these sort of naive approaches to evidentialism, crude evidentialism literally says that any belief, like riding a bike, requires a chain of conscious propositional. No, I mean it's that silly. First of all, so in other words, to believe that I'm riding a bike or that I know how to ride a bike, kind of like it's so silly. Like it requires me to sit and have this logical chain of beliefs in my conscious mind. Of course, we don't actually operate that way, right? I mean, we know kind of instantaneously once we've learned how to ride the bike. So right. It's totally contrary to actually how humans operate. But and so there are other philosophers who posit systems like sensible evidentialism, which is a modification of crude evidentialism, and again, those systems are problematic because we can think like classical proponents of these ideas would be people like Locke. For example, Locke says we should proportion our beliefs to what the evidence says. We should only believe what we have sufficient evidence to believe. We should weigh competing experiments and see which have sufficient evidence. I mean, all of these things are so vague that they don't really tell us anything.
Right.
And so